This program has been made possible in part by the following sponsors. The Trial Lawyers Association of BC. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. My new book about addictions, All the Way Home, Building Recovery That Works. Robert Bly, in his most famous book, Iron John, and in others, have spoken about the tragedy of how what he believes are now about 3 generations of men who actually don't know how to be men because we haven't had the fathers, the mentors, the teachers to teach us how to be men. And certainly there are now lots of strong women stepping forward and saying the same things about young girls. And some of them are not just writing treatises, some of them are actually doing something about it, and that includes our wonderful guest, Madeleine Shaw, who is the founder of G-Day for Girls, and they just had one of their big romp-ups on Sunday, November the 2nd, and had a pretty good turnout, not only with these young kids, but with some of their parents and family members. Madeleine, first of all, mazel tov. I mean, congratulations.
Thank you.
Such a great thing to do.
Thank you, David.
Yeah, where was your moment? I mean, Einstein, the apocryphal story is that Einstein was stepping on a tram in Vienna and went, equals MC squared.
Yeah, right, yeah. I mean, so you're asking me when the original idea
Yes,
for
well,
G-Day
what spurred this?
Well, you know, honestly, it goes back to when I was an adolescent girl myself. And I read a book called Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret by Judy Blume. It's a classic. And I think probably lots of people listening are going, yeah, that. But for people who haven't read it, it's a young adult fiction, and it's the story of a 12-year-old girl who is just so anticipatory of puberty, basically. She can't wait to start her period, and she's curious about everything. She's so excited, and she and her girlfriends have this little club. And I loved that book so much. Like I felt like Judy Blume was looking inside my head and my little 12-year-old heart and writing about me and calling it Margaret instead of Madeleine, so you know my family wouldn't be embarrassed. And but actually, it really inspired me because it was how I felt. I really felt like the notion of becoming an adult woman and everything that went along with it was an incredibly special thing. And I was reverent of adult women. To me, they were like, just, oh my, like I couldn't imagine being anybody smarter, more beautiful, wittier, like just seeing them and thinking, oh my gosh, I get to be one of these people one day, was just like, wow. It was like somebody telling me I get to be prime minister or an astronaut.
And can you, you just triggered something else entirely different. Roberta Bondar is the greatest public speaker I ever heard. First of all, she's just herself, but also who else can tell a story about sitting on the carpet like this, looking at a black and white TV at the age of 10 and seeing guys go to the moon and saying, I want to do that, and she then gets to do it.
Sure.
Roberta Bondar, astronaut, you know.
But that's the power of those childhood dreams. Like, I think actually the age of adolescence, we know ourselves pretty well. Like, I think there's a real certainty. Like, when I look at the girls who came to G-Day last Sunday as well as in April, they're incredibly confident and they have incredible ideas and they talk about their superpowers and they talk about their dreams and they talk about just all the things that they want to do. And it's like, okay, let's freeze frame this, like snapshot this right now, because part of the rationale for G-Day is that there seems to be a culture that shifts for them. So we go from talking to them as kids and saying, that's great that you want to be an astronaut, or that's great that you want to, you're a great soccer player or whatever, to suddenly switching gears on them and saying, actually, it's more important how you look and how skinny you are and how popular you are. And that starts to set in around this 10 to 12 sort of onset of adolescence age. And so that's sort of where it came from. It's partly my own kind of just going, wait a minute, there was really a missed opportunity because there was no party for me, when I started,
Take me into the mind of a 12-year-old girl, because having been a boy for almost 72 years, there's something I completely don't get. I literally don't get it. And I seriously want you to explain.
Yeah.
What makes you happy and excited about getting a period? Is it symbolic? Is it physical? Is it emotional? Is it a whole? I mean, you said that that's what happened to you. And I'm interested to hear what that was about.
Sure. I mean, well, actually, in fact, in my case, it was very anticlimactic. I mean, because there was no fanfare, and there was, you know, my mom was great, and I knew what I needed to know, and we handled things. But there was nothing to reflect back the sense of specialness that I felt. And I think that girls, it's not just so much about menarche or the advent of periods that we're looking at. Like, we're looking at adolescence, which is more of a psychosocial space that isn't necessarily tied to puberty, although puberty definitely happens within it. But I think these girls, like, they're excited and they're confident and they're brave. You know, they've got a ton of spirit. And
how do they get to G-Day? Because I watched several videos on your website, and by the way, your website will show on this program several times, I'm sure.
Thank you.
How do they get there? Because you're saying the girls are confident and so on, and the first thought that comes to me is, okay, but what about the girls who aren't confident enough to know they should be there? How did they get there?
Oh, my goodness. I mean, we have a really extensive network of colleagues and moms, and you know, I'm the mother of a 9-year-old daughter myself, and so you know, I went and spoke at her school and to help get the kids, and you know, we have my business partner and I have a really well-developed network of sort of progressive people, and you know, when I say that about the girls, they're not universally confident, and they're not obviously each one is on their own individual journey, and some may, you know, have a stronger confidence or self-esteem in some areas,
some will be quieter than others,
and so on. But it's really driven by the parents, because the girls themselves are not stepping up with their Visa card and saying, you know, driving themselves to G-Day. Like this is handled by parents, but we also, we don't just speak about parents at G-Day, we talk about champions, which is kind of a broader group of people. So that can include grandparents, you know, nominal aunties and uncles, biological or otherwise, godparents, and so on. And so a lot of the girls were brought by neighbors and aunties and others. Like in some cases, the parents were working and they couldn't come at all. But G-Day really supports the idea that we are the village. We're trying to be the village that most of us don't live in anymore, to support these girls in different ways, and whether that's from getting them to G-Day or just being a positive role model in a girl's life.
Madeleine, I grew up in the village. I grew up in my grandparents' home, and my granddad was the godfather of the whole extended family. So regularly, but especially on Sundays, I don't know, dozens, hundreds of people, aunts, uncles, cousins, you know, wandered through the house. And I grew up, and I think children need to grow up, not only with mom and or dad, but also that special uncle, that special aunt, and granddad, and so on. Those relationships are entirely different, and often very beautiful, and often lifesavers.
They are.
You know, if there's core conflict with a parent, often it's this third cousin with whom you get the special relationship. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's something we really try and reflect at G-Day, and number one, in bringing all these champions, but also even during the portion of the day that's just for the girls, we're trying to expose them to different role models, because you know, your parents can only be your parents to you, right? They can't be the whole world, because they're just two people, assuming you have two parents. And so the idea is for the girls to be exposed to a variety, and also in my favorite moment of G-Day, actually, this time, was when the girls, we're up at the Chan Center at UBC, and the girls have been off in this dance studio, and they've been dancing, and they've been doing all kinds of stuff. And we brought the champions, that being the parents, the village, and we lined both sides of the lobby-way of the Chan Center, and the girls came running out, and they were like wild horses, and they came storming out, and everybody cheered. And it was so beautiful, and in that moment I realized, like, everybody, they're not just there for their girl anymore. They're not just there for, you know, their kid or whatever. They were there for all the girls.
Yeah, for the universal girl.
Yeah, they were there for a generation, and that was an incredible feeling. Like, that to me was one of the biggest, most powerful takeaways and moments of G-Day, was when that happened, because it just felt like we felt united, and it felt like it was far beyond just the me and you. It was all of us.
Tell us, before we go to break, the kinds of things that happen on G-Day. I know that you've got guest speakers, and they're leaders in the community, and they're interesting, exciting women, and so on. What kinds of things happen? There's music, is there not?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's a combination of things. So there's these powerful conversations by speakers talking about things like leadership and self-esteem and body image and some, really substantive issues, and interspersed with like just super fun, crazy dancing and yoga and cupcakes and like drawing and having really great conversations with one another. So it's this kind of mix, and so the girls, they don't get bored that way. And also, it's just, I don't know, just a very diverse experience, I would say.
Yeah. Could you explain why women go to the washroom at restaurants together and men don't?
That's a big question, David. Yeah.
I guess what I'm asking is, I get the sense from looking at your website and reading about what you're doing, which I find very exciting and a great contribution to the community, by the way, that a language exists amongst women, as various languages exist among men, that is unique to the gender.
I would agree, and actually I'm going to get into a little bit of a longer answer to your question, because when I first started thinking about G-Day, I started thinking about red tents. And these sort of ancient tradition in biblical times of women gathering, and in fact in First Nations traditions as well, of gathering together in these sort of private spaces that were for women only. Yes. And then for some reason I started thinking about powder rooms and how they've kind of disappeared. Like when women used to go to the washroom together, there was actually a place to hang out. Like there was a physical space to, whatever, cry on each other's shoulders or, have a chat or whatever they were doing. And those spaces have gone away. They've eroded, so they don't exist. And so we actually imagine G-Day as being kind of a modern version of a place where we could bring our daughters to celebrate them at, this really, really key part of life where they're transitioning out of childhood into adolescence, and celebrate them in this very, very special, unique
I'm just trying to think, we just have a minute before break. Yeah. I'm just trying to think about our local community centers and our churches and synagogues and so on. I'm wondering if there are more and more female events where mothers and aunts and daughters get together for some reason or other.
Well, I like to think so, and just for the record, G-Day was totally welcomed dads and brothers and and so on. So
did some show up?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, okay. Oh my goodness, absolutely. Yeah, very proudly so, and it was a wonderful thing. So, but no, to answer your question, those spaces have traditionally they've worshipped male-centered deities and been led by men and so on. And so I think it's cool to create a different kind of space, in this case one that's secular, to have a different kind of rite of passage.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about how much men are in power and how much work women have to do to wrestle some power.
Yeah, that's a tall order.
Okay. We'll take a little break. Our guest is Madeleine Shaw, and we're talking about G-Day for girls. We're going to take a little breather, give you a chance to send us an email to davidberner.com. Always happy to hear from you. A guy sent me an email today about a radio show I did 15 years ago. Wants to know if I can find it. No, I can't. Anyway, and also your opportunity to say hello to these folks who support us here on Shaw Community Television Cable 4. Back with our guests in just a minute. This program has been made possible in part by the following sponsors. The Trial Lawyers Association of BC. The Vancouver Courier newspaper. My new book about addictions, All the Way Home, Building Recovery That Works. G-Day for Girls is the name of the movement, and it started here with our guest Madeleine Shaw, but you can bet your bottom dollar that next year and the year after it'll be a national event. It'll be happening in cities and towns all across the country, as it should. Let me ask you about a new image that's driving me crazy, okay? So I just want your thoughts on it. There's a new character, because you were talking about girls reach a certain age and then suddenly, you know, glamour magazines and you know, E.T., is that what it's called? Entertainment Tonight tells you what you're supposed to look like and so on. Well, there's this new character who's become a stock character on television, and I think it's destructive. I see one positive element, and all the rest of it I think is crap. Okay. And she is, I guess the model is Marissa Haggerty or whatever, her name is on Law and Order, SVU, but it's the ballsy cop.
Okay.
She's always, you know, she wears slacks and she's always packing and she's tough and she's competitive and, you know, she brings down the bad guys and so on. Now, I get it. I get that there's a positive side to this because we're showing women in a position of power and women who are capable and so on. But there's a kind of, I think it's such a false idea. Like, I haven't met too many such people. I don't know how many of these people exist.
Yeah, well, she sounds very monodimensional as a character.
But there are hundreds of them now. If you look at the major networks, including the Canadian networks, every network has at least 3 of these shows. Okay.
I guess I just hope we're on some kind of perhaps an evolution towards more realistic depictions of women and girls in the media. Yes. I mean, and maybe it's sort of like the 80s where you know, women put on their big power suits and they were like, okay, I'm going to go and do some big corporate thing. And you know, with respect, it's like that maybe we needed to actually reinvent corporate culture as opposed to just trying to fit into it. But that was the intermediary step, right? So I guess I would look at, you know, characters that way. It's like, okay, we're evolving, and I would certainly take the heat-packing ladies over, you know, the scantily clad, you know, silly, vapid characters that you typically see as well. And so it feels like, I guess I would be hopeful that we are starting to see, or it will evolve.
There's another phenomenon that may, in these characters on TV, that may be ahead of the real curve, and that is we've got Julia Louis-Dreyfus playing Veep, playing a vice president comically. Yes. Then we've got someone now doing Madam Secretary, and we've got a lot of women now in the White House on in dramas and comedies, and that may be a message. You know, that may be a statement about more women are wanting to say, look, you know, I think about a director I worked with years ago who made 2 very famous or 3 very famous movies, and now she's disappeared. Amy Heckerling, what happened to her, you know?
I don't know.
I'm not asking you to know, but
yeah, I hope we're going to a better place in terms of role models for girls, especially these days, because it just feels like the overwhelming message that they're getting is that they need to be pretty, they need to be thin, and they need to be popular. And that's it.
What do you do with the message? I was going to say this in a rude way. I'll try to find a better way to say it. How do you work against the message that you have to end your virginity as soon as possible?
Well,
that's a tough one.
We're not taking that on in particular. I mean, G-Day does not exist to take the place of sexual health educators
or to proselytize about.
No, it's not. It's completely about giving them ideas to support their self-esteem, basically. And it's not about conforming to any particular credo or a set of ideas. It's about helping them to feel good about who they are right now.
Tell us on Sunday, you had some guest speakers. Tell us about 1 or 2 of them, and particularly something that stood out in a message where you saw the girls really react to something beautiful from one of your, because you had about half a dozen terrific speakers.
Absolutely. I'm struggling to like just choose one. So. A young woman called Linda Zhao spoke, and so she's a financial kind of analyst today, but as a girl, she loved science, and she loved math, and she particularly loved astronomy, and she wanted to basically become an astronaut. Like that was her dream. And unfortunately, as a child, her father told her, he himself was an engineer.
Yes.
He told her that a career in science was an unfeminine thing to do.
Excuse me, Dad. How about Madame Curie?
Yeah, it changed her life, and because she, so she's sitting there at 10 years old, and this is what my dad's telling me, and it's not to say she's not unhappy, but it was very powerful. So she gave the girls a really powerful message, especially those who have an affection for, interest in, or talent with any of the technological, math, science, so on, technology, to really hang in there, because that is a particularly tough culture. It's one thing if a girl says, "Oh, I want to be a nurse," they're like, "Okay, that's great," But if you say, "I want to be a programmer," and that brings up a very topical thing going on right now, or I want to be an engineer, or I want to be someone, that's a little bit, that might be kind of hard for you, honey, or that, might be kind of difficult. So she really gave the girls, I think, a really powerful message to hang in there, whether their dream is around being, pursuing a career in science or not. And so I really love that. I saw a lot of the girls really nodding, and because earlier in the day they had been asked, we did this really great exercise where the girls were asked to step into the circle if certain things were true for them. And one of the questions they were asked was, step into the circle if you've ever been told that you can't do something because you're a girl. And over half the girls stepped in.
Whoa.
It's already happening.
And it's not just you can't be a scientist or you can't be an astronaut.
Oh, it's you can't be on this sports team. You can't. You can't go out now.
Yeah. And then we have these occasional phenomena who break through, like this young girl who just aced the Little League baseball championships. That girl pitcher, who's now world famous.
That's right.
And maybe that will open other doors.
Absolutely, but the girls need to have these role models presented to them, and also see that society is supporting that as well. That it's not just this sort of one-off, but it's like, yep, you can. If you can see it, you can be it. And so we're really trying to expose the girls to the idea that you absolutely can be it, whatever it is.
What Robert Bly talks about in Iron Man about boys and is elders. He talks about mentors and fathers and grandfathers and elders. I just put them all in that category.
Yep.
What do we say about elders with respect to young girls?
Well, they're valuable, and in fact, fathers have the greatest in households that are led by a mom and a dad, which isn't always the case. When it comes to a girl's self-esteem, particularly around how she looks and her kind of body consciousness, the father is the single greatest determiner of how that goes. So literally a few words from a father to an adolescent girl, judging her around how she looks or commenting, can be so detrimental, like just brutally, far more so than coming from a mother.
A couple of words are dreadfully cutting, and they stay.
Or even just, I don't know, it doesn't even need to, like by our standards, it wouldn't even necessarily be that way, but the idea is there's some kind of shortcoming or inadequacy.
And yet a couple of words that are positive are beautiful. They stay.
They do, and there's some wonderful books out there around how these forms of communication can actually impact girls, but I was really struck by that in particular, and so we were very intentional this time around including, yes, we include dads. This isn't just a women's thing, it is just a girls thing, but when it comes to, the village, the champions, the mentors, the elders, that absolutely, that includes fathers.
I work at the negative end of things because I'm a therapist in addictions, and I would tell you that 99% of all the women that I work with of any age have horrible issues with their fathers. Inevitably. They've all had dreadful experiences with parents who are physically abusive, emotionally abusive, distant, totally. They're statues, they're marble statues. They're busy making a lot of money, or they're busy not making a lot of money, or they're drunk themselves or something. But they are completely not useful.
That's how we socialize men, though. Like that's the sort of the flip side of this empowering girls and women is, I think, introducing the idea of the feminine to men and boys, and going like, this is part of you too. And we tend to just shut it down. We say the classic is boys don't cry, be strong, so on. But it's putting them into their own kind of box that isn't serving, obviously it's not serving the girls and it's not serving the women, but it's not serving the boys and men either. And so that's, it's so many people have asked me with this, they're like, what about a G day for boys?
Yeah. And that would be a B day. Yeah.
Sure. And, you know, to which I say that it's like, absolutely, I welcome the idea of somebody taking on that challenge, and in fact, going even further and creating sort of a gender-free kind of day that is just about this notion of the transition between childhood and adolescence, and just recognizing that as a community and holding that up and celebrating it. However, I don't think that's my task, or it may be in the future, but for now, as you alluded to earlier, it's about building G-Day and sort of other cities.
So we just have about a minute left. Okay. What about building G-Day? So what's the plan for next year, or next month, or 4 months from now?
Well, it's still kind of, we're in our rapid prototyping phase, but I think you'll see it possibly as far as Toronto, definitely in Victoria, definitely in Vancouver again in a year or so, possibly elsewhere in the Lower Mainland, and possibly in Calgary in 2015.
And you can only do so much. You're an entrepreneur, and you have other activities, and you have a young family, and so on. Yeah. So are you getting some colleagues to run with this ball with you?
Yes, I am. Yeah, and they're absolutely, like, the support for G-Day is boundless. Like, David, it's remarkable what people are coming to me with, and I have an amazing business partner, amazing team, an amazing team of volunteers, and so, you know, we're setting out to raise some money right now to help us finance doing all of this, and but we've got a really good, we're very well resourced and very well positioned to do this.
Wonderful. Madeleine, thanks. As I said earlier, great contribution to the community. We need lots of this.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Good to talk to you. All right, folks, that's it for today. I thought we were going to have a new guest next week, but I forgot. We're preparing the studio for municipal elections. So we're going to do a rerun, and the one I've chosen is Sue Hamill, the NDP MLA for Surrey, and she talks about recovery homes and crime in Surrey. Always topical. Thanks for being with us here on Shaw Community Television, Cable 4. Good night.